Jane was just living her life like normal while her husband was out on a hunting expedition with his friend. Then she receives an urgent message. Her husband has been seriously injured and he's likely not going to make it. Jane's devastated. At first, she just can't even function at the thought of not having her husband. But then she realizes that she has to take care of her children. And as the years go by, she is not only an exceptional mother, but also an incredibly devoted and faithful woman. She even founds a group of nuns and, together, they break the mold for nuns at the time and inspire countless others. Howdy y'all, welcome back to another episode of the Sanctified Podcast, the show where we explore the stories of various saints throughout history and learn about what they did and how we came to recognize them as saints today. Today, we're going to explore the life of Saint Saint Frances de Chantal, a kind and generous woman who changed the way that nuns of her time operated. Saint Frances de Chantal was born in Dijon, France on January 28, 1572. Her father was Benigni Fremyot, the royalist president of the Parliament of Burgundy, and her mother was Margaret de Beaubassi. And sadly, her mother passed away when Jane was just 1.5 years old. Her father raised her, and he made sure that she got a good education and grew into a very refined person. He raised her to also be very faithful to God and stay devoted. She did have religious connections too that would have helped with this. Her uncle was actually prior at Val-de-Chaux, and her brother actually became the Archbishop of Bourges. A couple of gentlemen had approached her father over the years, trying to get his approval for them to marry her, but he had denied everybody. But then, in 1592, the Baron of Chantal, Christopher de Rabutin, asked for her hand, and he was given permission. They got married, and they moved to the castle of Bourbouley. They hosted all kinds of parties there, enjoying the luxuries that their social standing offered to them. And to be honest, her husband, Christopher de Rabutin, kind of needed Jane Frances de Chantal in his life. He wasn't the most well-mannered man. He was kind of extravagant, and his father was also very extravagant and almost self-absorbed. But Jane helped Christopher become a better person, get him on the right path. Now, unfortunately, their first few children died as infants, and then Jane's sister passed away, which was really hard to handle. But her sister had kids, and they needed a new home, so they adopted her sister's kids. But after that, they actually had children of their own successfully, who grew up to lead pretty complete lives. Jane built a reputation as a very good overseer for her husband's estate, since he was frequently gone for service to the king. She was known for her almsgiving and for providing nursing care to those in need all around her castle. In 1601, her husband was accidentally injured in his leg during a hunting accident. There was a mix-up. They were out hunting some animals. His friend heard some rustling in the bushes, shot at it. It was actually Christopher. He did survive for 9 days, but ultimately the surgeons of his time just couldn't save him. He received his last rites before succumbing to his wounds. Jane was left a widow at just 28 years old, with 4 of her own children and 3 adopted children. She was devastated and in deep depression for quite a while after this, but her father wrote to her and he reminded her that she had duties that she had to do. So she doubled down on her charity to others and on her duties as a mother, and really, really served as an inspiration. She then took a vow of chastity before getting everything in order from her late husband's estate and moving in with her father-in-law. He had asked her to stay with him at Montalon, and she had to oblige him in order to ensure that her children received their estates. But life there wasn't great. Her father-in-law wasn't a very nice guy, and he actually had a servant who was even worse and took advantage of the man's old age. He was about 75, which for the 1600s, like right at the turn of 1500s, that's pretty darn old. But this suffering was just a distraction on Jane's path to sanctity. Around this time, Jane prayed a lot to God for a spiritual director. Then one day, she was granted a vision. She saw someone clearly, but she had no clue who the heck it was. In 1604, her father invited her home specifically to hear the Bishop of Geneva preach. But this just wasn't any ordinary preacher. This was Francis de Sales. After this interaction, Jane wanted to learn more from Francis de Sales, and the two became pretty good friends. And you might be able to put 2 and 2 together. Once she saw Francis de Sales, she realized that that was who was in her vision. Frances suggested that Jane divide her time equally between her father in Dijon and her father-in-law in Montalon. That at least would help ease any stress that might stem from visits or lack thereof. But Jane wanted to become a nun at the Carmelite house in Dijon that was founded in 1605, and that would mean she couldn't visit either of her fathers that much at all. But Frances said that she should hold off for now. With Frances as her spiritual guide, Jane sought a deeper connection with God. He advised her to get at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night. Pretty good advice, right? A lot of us could still use that advice today because it helps with stress levels. It helps keep you on track with what you need to be on track, keep a level head, keep your thoughts focused. Just a good night's sleep leads to a better day. And you know what that means? Better praying. A little while later, Frances de Sales bought a small house on Lake Annecy, and Jane Marie Favre, who was the daughter of the President of Savoy, and Charlotte de Burchard, moved in. The Congregation of the Visitation was canonically established at Annecy on June 6th, 1610. The group was pretty destitute. Jane had already given her wealth to her children, but they managed to get by. They welcomed women who had been rejected by other orders because of their failing health or their old age or some other reason, which I feel like it's kind of funny to think that other orders would refuse people because of that, but we've come a long way since then, and Jane's order worked to help embrace those people. People even criticized Jane for helping sick people and letting them in. She responded with, "What do you want me to do? I like sick people myself. I'm on their side." The group kind of went against the flow at the time. For the first 8 years, they were very outgoing in their public outreach, and they intended to be living examples of the virtues of Mary at the Visitation, hence their name being the Visitation Nuns. They even established a second convent in Lyon, but after that, they found some challenges by the more traditional views weighing heavy, and people saying that the nuns should live a cloistered and ascetic life. So Frances de Sales had to be like, "Listen, ladies, I agree with what you're doing, but a lot of the rest of the church doesn't right now. So if you could just play by the rules for a little bit, we'll get past this and we'll change the world." And that's kind of exactly what happened. Jane's reputation drew in a lot of aristocratic women. She was known far and wide for her devotion and for her adept management skills. So just to showcase that, the order that she was a founder for when she was in her 40s had over 86 new houses before she passed when she was 69. That would mean that she founded about 3 new houses every year for about 25 years straight. That's a pretty impressive feat. In 1641, Madame de Montmorency invited Jane to France, but upon her return journey, she became very sick. She stopped at the convent of Moulins, and it was there that her sickness took her life, December 13th, 1641. Saint Frances de Chantal was beatified in 1751, and her feast day was August 21st, when she was canonized in 1767, that is. But it was then moved to December 12th in 1969, so it was closer to the day of her death, December 13th, but that was already the feast day of St. Lucy. But then in 2001, Pope John Paul II moved it to August 12th, when the Memorial of Our Lady of Guadalupe was on December 12th. So her feast day's been shuffled around a little bit. Now, I do want to say that I had a much harder time than I was expecting to find information about St. Jane Frances de Chantal, specifically her miracles, but just in general, a lot of the stories that I did find, one source would contradict the other, and it was kind of tricky putting everything together so that it fit and flowed. But I think I got a pretty good encapsulation of everything, and I also try to avoid dragging this out crazy long. So we'll start trying to wrap it up real quick. But first, a couple of the miracle stories. There was a woman who was very sick, and she was actually paralyzed and on death's doorstep. But she went to Jane Frances de Chantal, and Saint Frances de Chantal prayed for her, and the woman's paralysis was lifted, and she could walk again. She was totally good to go and no longer on death's door. And I found multiple records that said when she would give out food and drink to people that she didn't actually have all that much to give out, but somehow she always had enough to give to everybody that was there. So this stuff was just miraculously getting duplicated as she would hand it out. And again, I found multiple sources saying that. I couldn't find specific instances, but it is a very well-documented miracle. And there are other records that talk about numerous healings that came through her during her life and after her death at her tomb. She's the patron saint of forgotten people, widows, and parents who are separated from their children. Real quick before I wrap it up, if you're interested in more details about Saint Jane Frances de Chantal's life, Emily Bowles wrote a book called The Life of Saint Jane Frances Fremyot de Chantal, and it has a lot of really great information. It goes into details on her life, on her family before she was born, on other stories about her family, and just a ton of information that I didn't include here because I wanted to focus on Saint Frances de Chantal, not her entire family. And I wanted to keep this fairly short. It's a little bit longer than most of my episodes, but I try to keep them bite-sized. I don't want to run this on for 30, 40 minutes. Maybe another time we can go into more details, but for now, we'll start wrapping up. If you got any questions, please let me know, and I'll do my best to answer them. So what do you think of Saint Jane Frances de Chantal? Isn't it incredible how she took her grief and turned it into something so passionate and productive? I hope you found her story interesting and, frankly, inspiring, because it really is. I look forward to learning your thoughts on Saint Jane Frances de Chantal. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to support the channel, you can subscribe, download the episode, like, comment, share with your friends, or send me a suggestion on a saint to check out by emailing me at sanctifiedpodcast@proton.me. You can find the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Podbean, and more. I upload every Thursday. Take care and have a wonderful day.